There is nothing quite like the feeling of sinking into a masterpiece. Nothing quite like the escapist experience of diving into the world of a page-turning novel, a gorgeous painting, a riveting film, or a compelling game. It is far more than just the suspense of disbelief. It is losing oneself completely in the atmosphere of a work of art, and letting the pressures of the outside world dissolve away, even if only for a little while. Hollow Knight is one of the many works of art that perfectly evoke this feeling, flooding the mind with its captivating world and drowning out the anxieties of life. The game accomplishes this through its expertly crafted atmosphere, creating a surreal world based on bugs and dreams and unfathomable things that all combine together to form something that somehow feels overwhelmingly human. Hollow Knight's atmosphere ranges from desolate and despondent to vibrant and charming, to mysterious and alien to wondrous and breathtaking, but no matter the tone it sets, Hollow Knight's atmosphere remains completely mesmerizing, consistently drawing the player into its beautiful world. Hollow Knight was developed by a small group in Australia known as Team Cherry, which first began with only its two co-founders, William Pellin and Ari Gibson. Eventually, however, as Hollow Knight's development progressed, the team expanded to include a few more hands on deck. The original idea for the game came from a previous project that Pellin and Gibson had worked on together in 2013, a simple game known as Hungry Night. Though this game shared some similarities to the final product of Hollow Knight, the two still differed heavily in both gameplay and reception. While Hungry Night was generally considered to not be a great game by any standards, by the time Hollow Knight released in 2017, it was met with critical acclaim, with audiences praising its visuals, mechanics, score, world building, and overall atmosphere. But Team Cherry wasn't done yet. By late 2018, the team had released 4 extensive downloadable content packs, adding loads of new content, fixing various bugs, and even adjusting color palettes for better tone. All for free. By product stances, Hollow Knight is far more than a bargain, with mountains of content for only $15 at most. But Hollow Knight is much more than just a product. Hollow Knight is a work of art, and Team Cherry was dedicated to perfecting it as much as they could. Of course, when looking at Hollow Knight as purely art, there still is plenty of criticism to be had. Joseph Anderson's Hollow Knight critique covers many aspects of the game where, in an ideal world, some things fall short of perfection. Of course, Hollow Knight wasn't created in an ideal world, but even in spite of this, its presentation and atmosphere draw so close to perfection that, at times, the difference between ideal and real is negligible. Even when the player first boots up the game, Hollow Knight's atmosphere is already at work, with a gloomy and desolate background set to the tune of Christopher Larkin's mysterious title track. This opening screen sets the tone of the game to come, and gives the player a vague feel of what they are getting into. The real magic, however, begins when the player starts their first game. The opening sequence of Hollow Knight is captivating yet minimal. It only features 3 short scenes, and each scene seems to serve more to evoke curiosity rather than to directly inform players about what they are getting into. On the surface, the player only learns 3 things from the entire opening sequence. From the poetry that first appears, the player can derive that Hollow Nest, whatever it was, while once great, has since fallen. The next scene overtly conveys the trope of a dormant evil awakening somewhere. And finally, the last bit of the opening sequence introduces the player to the knight, who they will take control of for the remainder of the game. Though the opening sequence of Hollow Knight doesn't give the player much direct information about the game, it expertly introduces the overarching atmosphere that the game provides, while still holding back enough to avoid spoiling Hollow Knight's many surprises. The howling winds combined with Christopher Larkin's haunting composition provide a solemn and lonely backdrop for the elegy excerpt. The poem itself strongly indicates that whatever the player is about to explore, it will be long past its prime. This tone is reinforced by the dark color palette, which remains consistent throughout all 3 scenes in the opening sequence, conveying a sense of desolation and emptiness. Whatever this dormant evil is, it isn't going to wreak havoc on some peaceful and perfect society. Whatever it wakes up to will have long been in ruin. And then there's the night, following the trail of lights in the darkness to whatever lies ahead. Where the darkness conveyed a grim and bleak atmosphere, the lights that the night follows juxtapose this barren feeling, providing a sense of hope, a sense that whatever the path leads to is still worth saving. The knight drops down from their perch, and the player takes control of their journey. Together, they enter the world of Hollow Knight. The first area of Hollow Knight is known as the King's Pass, and it is far from welcoming. There is no music, just the ambient sound of a distant piercing wind. The area features a dull color palette of grays and blues that even extends to the creatures that sparsely populate the path. The behavior of these creatures is just as lifeless and empty, ranging from lazily chasing after the knight to ignoring them completely and only doing harm if the player doesn't look too closely at where they are going. The mysterious tablets that line the path are the only elements saving the knight from the dreary atmosphere of this area. As the knight approaches each tablet, they begin to glow brightly against the dark background, whispering information about how to play the game, and hinting at what lies ahead. The grandiloquent messages on each of these tablets, in addition to referring to mysterious higher beings, also speak of the equally enigmatic kingdom of Hallownest, indicating the former might of the monarchy, though the player already knows it has fallen. This leaves only the mysteries of how it fell and what still remains behind. This question of what lies ahead combines perfectly with the emptiness of the King's Pass, the former pulling the player forward out of curiosity, and the latter pushing them to move past the dull and bland environment. As the knight reaches the end of the area, they are met by a giant sealed door, and a final tablet that urges them onward. The bleak yet intriguing atmosphere of the King's Pass acts as a force that constantly pushes the player forward, and by the time they reach this final obstacle, it is near impossible to swim against the current. The player breaks down the door, shattering it into pieces, and ventures out into the unknown. After the mystical buildup of the King's Pass, it is not unreasonable for the player to expect to hit the ground running, starting off their journey with some vast and intricate set piece. Yet, instead of dropping down to the site of the beautiful ruins of a fallen civilization, the player is met with the small, fading town of Dirtmouth. Yes, it is civilization, and yes, it has seen better days, but it is far from any expectation of the first sight of Hallownest. Every aspect of Dirtmouth's atmosphere is melancholic. The distant winds from the King's Pass are now fully present, howling alongside Christopher Larkin's beautifully composed lament. Gone are the claustrophobic confines of the King's Pass, replaced by a vast expanse filled with nothing but empty structures, solemn streetlights, and clouds of dust and debris that race across the barren clearing. Dirtmouth's atmosphere is so desolate and dismal that even its one inhabitant, the first friendly face the knight has seen in the entire game, only seems to add to the sorrow of the town. This solitary denizen goes by the aptronym of Elderbug, and despite his benign and amicable nature, it is clear that his situation has given him a pessimistic outlook on life. Elderbug tells the knight about the town well, which remains the only entrance into the main kingdom of Hallownest. He also tells of how, one by one, the other residents of his fading town disappeared into the well, seeking the various treasures and mysteries that lie within the ruins. Yet, despite Elderbug's warnings about the dangerous and poisonous ruins, both he and the player know that the knight's journey will not end in Dirtmouth. It is near impossible to swim against the current. The knight leaves Elderbug to his solitude and drops down into the darkness below.
Akala emtono.
The knight's true entrance into Hallownest is not the grand spectacle of busting down a giant sealed door, but rather the humble descent into a dilapidated well. The forgotten Crossroads may not be some glorious ruin still teeming with intelligent life, but it has far more to offer than the crudely carved caves of the King's Pass. For starters, this area is much more densely populated with both friends and foes alike. The more hostile creatures of the Forgotten Crossroads retain the theme of mindlessness, with the same stubborn charging and chasing as before, though there are a few surprises that can prove especially dangerous if the player lets down their guard. While this simple behavior does seem fitting for some of the creatures of the Forgotten Crossroads, there are others for which the behavior doesn't quite match their appearance. It makes sense for a normal bug to mindlessly crawl about or aggressively defend its territory. But then there are some bugs who walk on two legs, who carry and use weapons, who seem reminiscent of intelligent life, reminiscent of humans. When these humanoid bugs wander aimlessly and attack stubbornly, it feels like there is something missing. It is almost as if the inhabitants of the Forgotten Crossroads reflect the area as a whole. Everything the night sees is just a shadow of what it once was. This isn't an unexpected revelation in the ruins of a fallen kingdom, but it is unsettling nonetheless. The Forgotten Crossroads holds many unsettling and unnerving things, but it is never enough to overwhelm the player. The danger and discomfort of the area are partially offset by another, more calming part of the atmosphere. The music of the Forgotten Crossroads is quite the contrast from that of Dirtmouth. It doesn't have the same invasively morose melody of Dirtmouth's lament, doesn't evoke the same strong emotions. Instead, it lets the player know that despite Elderbug's warnings, this is where they are supposed to be, and exploring these crossroads is what they are meant to do. In fact, exploration of the crossroads is heavily encouraged, with mysteries and wonders, challenges and threats, and treasures and rewards all placed in every corner of the area. Though the player has to face various dangers and discomforts in their exploration of the Forgotten Crossroads, they are frequently rewarded for their curiosity, and the visuals, music, and charming characters all work to ease any stress that the player might have. The atmosphere of the Forgotten Crossroads gracefully walks the line between stressful and soothing, perfectly balancing the perilous with the pleasant. This balance goes beyond just the zombie-like inhabitants or the ambient music of the area. It can be found in almost every aspect of the atmosphere. Friendly faces mix with unrelenting enemies. Inexplicable obstacles offset ornate architecture. Nauseating noises are juxtaposed with comforting voices. For every demanding, unsettling, or unfamiliar element in the atmosphere of the Forgotten Crossroads, there is always something familiar, charming, or intriguing to balance it out. This balanced atmosphere does much more than just encourage exploration. Wandering through the empty highways of this area is a captivating experience, with the dangers, mysteries, and pleasant surprises all keeping the player engaged no matter where they go. Within the Forgotten Crossroads, the player finds rejuvenating hot springs, runs past giant tunneling worms, and discovers and opens a stag station that serves as one of the game's fast travel systems. They slash through bugs of all sizes, ranging from giant guards to small flies and crawlers. They meet a mysterious shaman, gain a new ability, and blast their way through bugs that block the path. All the while, the player is accompanied by that perfect mix of the familiar and the unknown. Of course, there is only so much of the Forgotten Crossroads that can be explored, and eventually the player must journey to the next section that Hollow Knight has to offer. While the Forgotten Crossroads is an exciting place to be, it is time to move on. The player blasts their way past a giant bug and leaves the Forgotten Crossroads behind. After spending the entirety of the game under the same intriguing yet oppressively dull atmosphere, stepping out into Greenpath is a wonderful breath of fresh air. Everything about this area feels alive. Gone are the dreary blues and grays, replaced with a vibrant variety of greens. And just as in previous areas, these greens extend to the majority of the area's inhabitants, with moss-covered bugs and plants populating the overgrown path. The visual design of Greenpath conveys the joy with which nature has reclaimed her territory. The same ornate architecture that characterized the reaches of Hallownest can also be found in this area, but the vibrant flora and enchanting environment clearly take center stage. Beyond the overgrown architecture lies a pure wilderness full of acidic pools, mossy pathways, and plenty of sunlight to spare. Greenpath's juxtaposition with the quiet, empty, and unassuming highways of the forgotten Crossroads only highlights and enhances its energetic visuals. Compared to any of the previous places the knight has visited, Greenpath is loud and full of life. Unlike the more ambient track of the forgotten Crossroads, the music of Greenpath actively participates in setting a lively tone, transforming the mournful melody from Dirtmouth into a playful tune filled with energy and excitement. Additionally, the percussion, strings, and woodwinds of Greenpath's track are accompanied by the delightful symphony of nature. The sounds in this area perfectly suit the scene, from the energetic chirping of adorable bush creatures, to the bright bubbling of acid pools, to the incessant flapping of needling mosquitoes. The music and ambience of Greenpath masterfully mix together to paint the beautiful soundscape of a living and breathing place. Such a lively environment would be incomplete, however, without the presence of life. Nearly every inhabitant of Greenpath is hostile toward the knight, yet the environment doesn't feel unwelcoming. Unlike the enemies that precede them, the creatures of this area display far more spirit and energy in their actions, so much so that they provide company for the player, even in antagonism. Unlike the forgotten Crossroads, nothing seems to be missing from any of the creatures that inhabit Greenpath. Even the humanoid moss knights display an apt level of intelligence in their graceful attacks. Each creature's behavior feels so fitting, be it the casual romp of mossy critters, the plunging attacks of relentless mosquitoes, the colorful explosions of mosskin, or the majestic slashes of grass-coated knights. In the company of the vibrant visuals, lively soundscape, and energetic inhabitants of Greenpath, the knight's journey no longer feels like a solemn exploration of a long-forgotten ruin, but rather an enchanting adventure through a verdant wilderness. Throughout the overgrown wilderness, a mysterious presence further exacerbates this sense of adventure. A mystical warrior dressed in red and wielding a needle, which she uses in tandem with acrobatic movements to constantly stay just out of reach, leading the knight further and further into Greenpath. As the knight travels, they will eventually come across a familiar paper trail and delightful humming, as they meet Cornifer the cartographer for the second time. In addition to selling the knight an unfinished map of the region, Cornifer details an encounter with the red-clad warrior that mirrors the knight's experience, and feeds the flame of curiosity over who this elusive figure could be. The mystery compels the player onward. The knight meets a beast cloaked in shadow who gives them a hunter's journal, where the player can read about the enemies they encounter. The warrior waits patiently and leads the knight further on. The knight fends off creatures who coat themselves in foliage and charge recklessly into battle. The warrior waits patiently and leads the knight further on. The knight hops over treacherous acid pools and narrowly dodges plants that snap shut in the space where they just were. the warrior waits patiently and leads the knight further on. The knight fights off a majestic moss soldier dancing just out of reach of its slicing nail as exhilarating and adventurous music plays in the background. The knight defeats a giant vengefly that attacks in swoops and dives, only to be scorned by the ungrateful bug that they saved. The knight finds a stag station, fights off 2 soldiers at once, dodges more moss chargers, finds some treasure, saves a grub. The warrior is nowhere to be seen. The atmosphere of Greenpath is so captivating that it can be hard to notice when the warrior stops guiding the knight through every other room. Taking in the scenery, the graceful battles, the charming creatures, and the enchanting music is enough to drown out the curiosities of Hollow Knight's world. So what if there are no vast or beautiful ruins to be found? So what if the kingdom of Hallownest fell long ago? So what if the knight has no true purpose in this mysterious underground land? As long as there are environments and experiences as delightful as Greenpath, the world of Hollow Knight is more than worth exploring. After enough searching, the player eventually finds the warrior waiting for them. Her name is Hornet, and she knows why the knight has come to Hallownest. She warns the knight not to take one step further, but the player has no choice but to stand their ground. Hornet lets out a cry and begins to attack, expertly wielding her nail and deftly darting across the screen. The battle with Hornet feels more like a dance than a fight, as the player dodges the warrior's graceful attacks and counters with their own. Finally, after the knight has proven their worth, Hornet grapples out of sight, leaving the player with just a fallen bug that has a striking resemblance to the knight. From this bug, they can pick up the Mothwing Cloak and gain a new dash ability. Then suddenly, once the knight wakes up next to their fallen lookalike, their newfound dash ability allows them to explore more of Greenpath. The knight can reach the mystical Lake of Un, attempt a thorny platforming challenge, or even fight a giant moss charger. Eventually, however, it is time for the knight to move along and continue their exploration of the underground. The knight descends downward, past projectile-spitting plants and across acid pools, diving once again into the unknown.
Nami nobis.
The descent through Fog Canyon is tantalizing. Everything here feels so alien compared to Greenpath, yet it is also surprisingly serene, giving an intriguing duality to the area. The visuals are stunning, with the greens of platform foliage mixing in with the pinks and blues of bubbles that fade in and out of sight, gently floating across the screen. The music here is a more minimal version of Greenpath's theme, and it adds a relaxed tone to the atmosphere. The ambience, on the other hand, is an unsettling version of the sounds of Deep Nest, a sinister area that the knight faces later in the game. Though alone this ambience track would create a completely unnerving environment, its juxtaposition with the calming music highlights Fog Canyon's bizarre duality. The music or ambience alone would leave the atmosphere of Fog Canyon a little too one-dimensional and similar to other areas, but juxtaposing the two creates a unique and interesting soundscape. The aspects that truly define Fog Canyon, however, are its inhabitants. Metroid-like jellyfish hover lazily throughout the area, swishing up and down and emitting electric buzzing atop the gurgling acid pools. The unobtrusive behavior of these jellyfish adds to the strangely calming atmosphere of Fog Canyon. They don't attack the knight, they don't talk to them, and they don't really do much of anything. However, they are far from harmless. The knight is in for quite the shock if they step too close, and the larger jellyfish hold a nasty surprise for any player that decides to pop their bubble. The jellyfish combine with acid pools and electric flies to transform Fog Canyon into a gauntlet of sorts, where the player must carefully navigate through the peaceful scenery. The dangerous yet oblivious jellyfish present yet another duality of Fog Canyon, and once again, this duality only adds to the intriguing atmosphere of the area. Fog Canyon's tranquil yet strange atmosphere seems to scream for exploration. Yet in a clever yet cruel trick of game design, the player cannot do anything but pass through this bizarre place. They can hear and follow Cornifer's humming, only to find that his paper trail starts behind an impassable shadowy barrier. They can traverse a difficult platforming challenge involving electric bugs and tight timing, only to find their path blocked once more. They can enter a room with a pile of treasure in plain sight, but there is no way to reach it. All of the excitement and curiosity that Fog Canyon inspires only serves to tantalize the player as they pass through. In the end, the knight must continue on, with nothing new other than a note to self to return to Fog Canyon when it can truly be explored.
Mana má tu čuronamen.
The Queen Station is not a major part of Hollow Knight. Instead, it mainly serves as a short respite after the sensory overload of Fog Canyon. The Queen Station is a small area, with only 3 rooms in total. Quirrell waits for the knight in the main room, pondering both the strange descent through Fog Canyon and the station itself. In one of the smaller rooms, a tall, peculiar bug named Willow snacks on hidden flora, though she is perfectly happy to lean down and talk to the knight. The final room is a stag station that can be found in the bottom left corner, where the player can quickly travel to any previous area if they so desire. Other than these few curiosities, the Queen Station only seems to serve as a transition between Fog Canyon and the next area, and as a waypoint for the game's fast travel system. Yet even this tiny blip within Hollow Knight's massive world holds its own uniquely enchanting atmosphere. As mentioned before, when talking to Quirrell in the main area, he contemplates both the mysterious Fog Canyon and the impressive presence of the Queen's Station in such chaotic surroundings. Once Quirrell's dialogue is exhausted, however, he becomes lost in thought and mentions hearing the faint echo of bells in the station. While this can easily be dismissed as a simple throwaway line to fit Quirrell's pensive nature, Hollow Knight's atmosphere is never one to disappoint. If the player waits long enough, they too can hear the bells, along with the faint yet lively chatter of the bugs that used to travel through the station. Standing in the now empty and overgrown station, the player can listen to the echoes of its beautiful and bustling past. It is this ghostly ambience that makes the Queen's Station truly unique. Despite its premise of the exploration of a fallen kingdom, Hollow Knight's atmosphere tends to focus on the present. The solemn and sorrowful atmosphere of Dirtmouth is built not from the revelation of what has fallen, but rather the mourning of the little that remains. Dirtmouth's lament is much more for the lonely existence of Elderbug than it is for the loss of what was once a bustling town. Similarly, the Forgotten Crossroads doesn't display or describe how far Hallownest has fallen to get to the point that the player sees. Instead, the atmosphere is calm and quiet, though it includes more unsettling aspects as well. The Forgotten Crossroads of the present is a place filled with life, yet somehow still far from lively, and its atmosphere perfectly conveys this feeling. Greenpath's atmosphere is so engrossed in the present that it is possible to forget about Hallownest altogether and instead get lost within the delightful verdant wilds. Fog Canyon does much of the same, though it withholds the satisfaction of allowing the player to explore its mysteries until much later on. Yet, unlike every other area preceding it, the Queen's Station does not hold much in terms of the present. All that can be found are empty archways and a couple of curious explorers. The Queen's Station is the first area that the knight can reach that contains an atmosphere that truly focuses on the past, and despite its small size, the station is powerfully poignant. No matter how large or small, every part of Hollow Knight's world has a story to tell, and only through the masterful construction of atmosphere do these stories truly hit home. The player can stop to enjoy the Queen's Station, or they could just as easily move along without hesitation, without knowing the beautiful vignette that they have missed. Either way, the player must eventually continue their exploration of Hollow Knight's decaying world. The Fungal Wastes are weird. Not necessarily in a bad way. The fungal theme of the enemies, though at first a bit off-putting, is in actuality rather charming. The personalities of the rolling, sneezing, head-bashing creatures of this area are somewhat endearing, both in their character design, the sounds they make, and their behaviors. This fungal theme extends beyond the creatures of this area, with mushrooms sprouting from every corner, spores floating through the air, and even the geodeposits blending in with their surroundings. The music and ambience both add to this atmosphere, with the soft hisses of mushrooms accompanying a peculiar track that fits the setting quite well. Yet even though this atmosphere is just as expertly crafted as any other area that the player has explored thus far, it still sticks out like a sore thumb among its predecessors. Unlike Greenpath or the Forgotten Crossroads or Fog Canyon, the Fungal Wastes do not do much at first to compel the player forward. There is no mysterious warrior leading them deeper in, no captivating environment begging to be explored, just a self-contained area that seems to be perfectly content without any visitors. For the first half of this area, the player finds themselves slashing, dodging, and bouncing off of various mushroom creatures. The player's encounters with this decidedly hostile fungal tribe culminate in a battle with two large mushroom ogres, who spit acid and slam their heads against the ground in an attempt to fend off the knight. After defeating these mini-bosses, the knight exits a greenhouse and proceeds under an overhang with some strikingly familiar architecture. All of the sudden, the Fungal Wastes are no longer the same self-contained environment indifferent to exploration. With spiral shells and intricate archways overhead, the knight is on the pilgrim's way to the heart of Hallownest once more. In spite of this revelation, however, the Fungal Wastes are not yet done with the knight and still hold a few surprises further in. Exiting the greenhouse and seeing Hallownest's Pilgrim's Way is the closest thing the Fungal Wastes hold in terms of a turning point. Not only is the mystery of Hallownest revived, but hints at another interesting story within the Fungal Wastes itself grow in number. The signature designs of Hallownest are not the only forms of architecture within the Fungal Wastes. Sprinkled throughout the area are wood and bone structures supported by ropes and chains. Throughout the first half of the Fungal Wastes, these structures blend in perfectly with the atmosphere of the area, with their more natural designs and colors seeming to fit in nicely with both the color palette and general theme of the area around them. When juxtaposed with the intricate style of Hallownest's roads, however, the more minimalist design of the Fungal Wastes stands out. And unlike the long-fallen architects of Hallownest, the creators of these wooden structures are very much alive, and they do not welcome outsiders. Enter stage right, the Mantis tribe. Their minds are sharp, their claws even sharper. Unlike the charming yet ultimately goofy fungus creatures of the first half, the Mantis tribe is swift and deadly, clearly telegraphing their attacks yet still leaving no room for error. Their introduction completely recontextualizes the isolated atmosphere of the Fungal Wastes. The reason the atmosphere seems to so strongly discourage exploration is because the Fungal Wastes do not want to be explored. The Mantis tribe does not want visitors and can clearly sustain itself, a sentiment that the atmosphere has been communicating from the start. Though it provided for what may seem like a weaker introduction to the area, the atmosphere of the Fungal Waste introduces and enhances the captivating challenge of the Mantis tribe. The area rewards the player for their progress so far with a glimpse of Hornet and hints at the nearing heart of Hallownest. So when these new foes are introduced and the difficulty spikes, it is not a discouragement to the player, but rather a promise of further rewards. Higher stakes, higher payoff. The most notable prize the player receives from their exploration is the Mantis Claw, a tool that allows the knight to climb up walls. In the midst of the fascinating Mantis village with its perilous yet pleasant architecture and its menacing yet majestic inhabitants, This new wall climb ability seems comparatively less impressive. Yet whether the player knows it or not, the moment they grab that mantis claw, Hollow Knight's world opens up significantly. Already, the player has a choice. On one hand, they could descend further into the Mantis Village and challenge the Mantis Lords, 3 deadly sisters who show no mercy. If they defeat the Mantis Lords, they will earn the respect of the tribe, and will no longer be attacked by any of its members. Yet another nearby option is equally enticing. With the newly acquired Mantis Claw, there is nothing stopping the player from following Hornet across an acid lake and into the heart of Hallownest. While this choice may seem like a dilemma for those captivated by the menacing Mantis tribe, defeating the Mantis Lords is no easy task, and throughout the entire game, the knight has been guided toward Hallownest's heart. If the player challenges the Mantis Lords and is understandably overwhelmed by their prowess, Quirrell further suggests that they proceed onward to the capital and save this fight for later. And so the knight follows in Hornet's footsteps, climbing and dashing through thorny platforms and reconstructing a fallen bridge as they cross an acidic lake. Finally, the knight reaches a giant gate with a bulky statue in front of it. They insert a city crest that they received from the forgotten Crossroads, and the gate lifts open to let them through. Once they make it to the other side, however, the gate slams shut behind them. With their exit blocked off, the player has no choice but to proceed onward into the capital of Hallownest. Everything has been leading up to this moment. The player enters Hallownest's capital through a small corridor, narrowly avoiding a kamikaze creature that explodes where the knight was standing just moments before. They slash through familiar empty faces, meet their first husk sentry, and slice past him as well. They drop down into the next room and music starts to play. Everything has been leading up to this moment. The knight defeats yet another sentry and reaches a tall glass window. As they approach the window, the music gets louder, as if beckoning the knight to step outside and view the city in all of its ruinous glory. Through the glass, they see an incredibly vast cavern where somehow, even all this way underground, it is raining. There is a sorrowful and solemn tone to this city of tears, yet it still somehow feels marvelous, even in its decay. The knight gets a drop on another husk guard, and then takes an elegant elevator further down. Everything has been leading up to this moment. The knight sees Quirrell sitting calmly on the bench, contemplating the rain, the city, and their journey so far. The two share the beautiful sight and sound of the rain falling against the window. Everything has been leading up to this moment. The knight descends further, fighting guards and riding elevators, all to the sound of the rain and the music on the other side of the glass, until suddenly, the glass isn't there anymore. Everything has been leading up to this moment. Hollow Knight's world is huge. The pure scale of the underground realm is baffling, and by the time the player reaches the City of Tears, nearly all of it is accessible, just waiting to be explored. Despite the impressive build-up and payoff of the journey to Hallownest's heart, there is still so much to do in this game. The knight could climb the Crystal Peak, filled with powerful materials that both lure in and fuse with the region's inhabitants. They could descend into Deepnest willingly or by chance and experience a terrifying and claustrophobic labyrinth of spiders and centipedes. They could reach the kingdom's edge where ash and bodies constantly rain from the sky. So many things remain to be explored, so many mysteries still to be solved. What is the strange air that turns the creatures of Hallownest violent and mindless? Who are the mysterious cloaked figures that interfere with the knight's exploration? Who was the mysterious king who ruled Hallownest, who brought it into fruition? How did he and his kingdom fall? As the knight continues their exploration of the underground world, they find the answers to all of these questions, only for new ones to surface. And as the knight continues their journey, they slowly discover their true purpose in the fallen kingdom of Hallownest, which is, well, some mysteries have to be explored on one's own to truly be experienced. And more than anything, that is what Hollow Knight is, an experience. No label or summary or essay could ever truly capture the experience of playing this game. The powerful build-up to and payoff of the knight's arrival at the City of Tears more than demonstrates the mastery behind the atmosphere of Hollow Knight. Be it the desolate and dreary atmosphere of King's Pass, the faded and forlorn of Dirtmouth, the vibrant and vigorous of Greenpath, the serene and strange of Fog Canyon, the poignant and pensive of Queen's Station, or the delightful and deadly of the Fungal Wastes, Hollow Knight is mesmerizing, drawing the player into its masterful world. It is so easy to just sink into the atmosphere of Hollow Knight and immerse oneself into a land of bugs, battle, and beauty. And when the player first steps outside in the City of Tears, as the rain falls around them and Christopher Larkin's score swells into a captivating crescendo, at this very moment, the atmosphere of Hollow Knight is endlessly and undeniably breathtaking. There is nothing quite like the feeling of sinking into a masterpiece. Nothing quite like diving into a world so expertly crafted that it truly feels alive, even in its decay. There is nothing quite like exploring a fallen kingdom and finding life and hope and beauty even among its abandoned ruins. There is nothing quite like the atmosphere and experience of Hollow Knight.